Today, we're looking at a Magenta ink by Rohrer and Klingner, their Iron Gall Scabiosa. As always, there's timestamps down below so you can skip around, but if you've got the time, I'd appreciate you if you could check out the entire video. If you're interested in other Magenta inks, there's a link to that playlist down in the description. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. To try and have some standard papers we look at, we always start with Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. Let's get into that first one, Clairfontaine's 90 GSM paper. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is quite a bit lighter than the stub with no feather, spread, halo sheen. It does offer some decent shading. The word jumps back and forth quite a bit between its darker and lighter tones, like in the J, starts light, gets dark at the U, light at the M, dark at the P. Over starts light and gets dark, brown starts dark and gets light, and 15 seconds to dry. Medium is about the same tone as the extra fine, with no feather, spread, halo sheen, some much nicer shading. It really shows up better here. Quick starts dark, gets light, gets dark again. Brown starts dark and works its way light. Over starts its way light and works its way dark. 24 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both shows good color variation, and we got that in the writing. And a smear test you could likely recover if you smeared while you were writing. To make sure there's a range of experience with this ink, the writing samples are always done with the Jinhao 159 with a 1.1 stub, the Jinhao X 450 with a medium, and a Jinhao X 750 with an extra fine. Then a Pilot Metropolitan with a fine nib was inked up, used for a day, and used to take the notes for this video. Now let's take a look at the second standard paper, 52 GSM, Tomoe River. We have no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo sheen, minor spots of shading. Like on the Klingner, right at the N to G, you do see it a bit lighter. The extra fine is quite a bit lighter than the stub. With no feather, spread, halo sheen, it does shade here. The quick starts slightly darker, gets much lighter, and then very dark at the K. Brown starts darker and becomes lighter. Fox goes from dark to light to dark. 23 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the extra fine, with no feather, spread, halo sheen, nice shading. Look at the going from light to dark, quick from light to dark, brown from dark to light, and fox from light to dark. 38 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both do show us good color variation, and we do get it in the writing, and the smear test, you could recover this if you smeared while you were writing. I agree with Vita. There's a lot to learn by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. There's a line of ink put down, and then it's immediately put into water for 10 to 15 seconds. Now, we see a grayish line on the bottom, and this kind of blue tone pushing its way up. And as it comes up, we really do see a pink and then a yellow all the way at the very top. The one on the right was let dry for 10 minutes before it was dunked in the water, and you see that line on the bottom is much darker and more there. The blue has not traveled nearly as far, so it's really noticeable at the bottom. That pink is even getting darker and not traveling as far up, but the yellow seems unaffected. This next one was allowed to dry for 24 hours before it was put into water. That line across the bottom is much darker, a lot less of that blue is even moving. The pink is pushing its way up, and still the yellow's moving a lot. Now this one was let dry for 72 hours. We see that gray line with the blue are very much there. The pink is pushing very lightly up. That yellow is still all the way to the top. That yellow is going to be a fleeing color. The last standard paper is 80 GSM Rhodia dot pad. We have no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is quite a bit lighter than the stub, with no feather, spread, halo sheen. Not a lot of shading here on this paper. 17 seconds to dry. The medium is about the same tone as the extra fine, with no feather, spread, halo sheen. It shades better than the extra fine did. Thus starts light and gets dark. Quick starts a little dark, gets lighter, gets dark again. Brown starts light, gets dark, and gets light. 27 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show good color variation, and we are getting it in the medium, not as much in the extra fine. And the smear test says you could likely recover it if you smeared while you were writing. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it may be to clean from your pen. The smear is allowed to dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, it's handling itself very well. This makes me feel really good about using this in a note-taking situation. Water's reactivating and lifting some, but not a whole lot of this ink. And pen flush isn't really doing much more than water's doing. The 1/3 bleach solution's removing most of it, but leaving a lot of yellow discoloration on the page. It only took water for me to get this out of my pen. For the next writing samples, I like to change up the paper in order to really change up the experiences of these inks. Here we're going to take a look at the yellow Rhodia. The main reason to look at the yellow Rhodia paper is not to look at a real performance difference, but tone changes that we may go through for having the lighter paper. And what we see here is this extra fine is showing much better shading than it did on the white paper. The medium is a little bit lighter tone than we got on the white paper, but that's pretty much it. This I do see as a good option to use even in a professional environment because it can be quite red leaning in how people would think of it. For the inks tested, the average viscosity was 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Rohrer and Klingner's Scabiosa has a viscosity of 1.36, making this a wet ink. The next paper is by Black and Red. We have no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. The extra fine is a lot lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen. It does shade. You look at brown, starting darker, getting lighter. Quick starts dark, gets light, gets dark again. 8 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen. It shades pretty nicely where it goes dark to dark, all in quick, and brown goes from dark to light. 11 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both, far left to far right, do show some color variation. I think it looks better in the writing. The smear test, I don't think it's showing as well on camera, but I believe this to be very recoverable if you smeared while you were writing. For the inks tested, the average dry time was 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Rohrer and Klingner's Gall Scabiosa has an average dry time of 24 seconds, making it take just a little bit longer than normal to dry. The last writing sample is done on white lines paper. You see the only spots we're getting any kind of bleed is in the scrubby, which is really good considering this paper is not made for fountain pens. We have no other bleeding and no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. The extra fine being quite a bit lighter than the stub has no feather spread, halo sheen. It does shade. Look at how the starts lighter and gets darker. Quick starts lighter and gets darker. Brown starts darker and gets lighter. 8 seconds to dry. The medium is about the same tone as the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen. It does shade. Look at brown starting dark, getting very light and dark again. Quick starts lighter, gets darker, gets lighter, and then darker again. Over goes from light to dark. 10 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both do show some color variation, though it's better in the writing. And the smear test, you could recover this if you smeared while you were writing. Instead of finding inks that look like Rohrer and Klingner's Scabiosa, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I went with a nice blue, a standard blue, Aurora's Blue. So what do I think of Rohrer and Klingner's Gall Scabiosa? This seems to hold its color very well with aging. There is color variation that you get depending on the pen, and it gives some very nice shading. I would say I enjoy the tone here in what I'm writing a lot. It makes me consider a bottle of this ink. So what nib and pen give the best writing experience with this ink? I found that wet stubs really didn't give me a tone I was most happy with, but a medium to dry flow any other nib looked great. I didn't care for it in stubs, and I just didn't care for it in wet pens. But that's because this ink does have some very nice shading to it. I hope you got something out of this video, and tomorrow we're going to take a look at Pen BBS number 129.